Are you dating yet find that you are attracted to mentally unhealthy people? Stay tuned to see how a tarot reading can get to the bottom of your issues. Hi everybody, I'm Sue Allen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we're learning how to read tarot one card at a time. In today's video, we'll be looking at 4 cards to help determine why a woman has not been successful in her dating life. I will be using the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot, and there's a link below. This question was posted anonymously online by someone who I will call Adrian. Her question was, why do I keep getting attracted to mentally unhealthy people? I'm going to assume that she's asking about romantic attractions. Adrian drew 4 cards, the 2 of Swords, 3 of Pentacles, 10 of Pentacles, and 9 of Wands. Adrian did not mention using a spread, and we won't be in this reading. Let's begin with my first impressions. They are all minor arcana cards, so I don't think we're dealing with any big issues. Once Adrian figures out what's going on, I think she will be able to move forward and date healthier people. All 4 cards are upright. We have a sword, a wand, and 2 pentacles. The 2 outside cards are both on a stage. Both of the figures have white bandages that look like blindfolds. It is covering up the eyes of the 2 of Swords and above the eyes on the 9 of Wands. These cards are both outside. The middle cards are set inside and both have multiple people. This was one of those readings where I looked at the cards and immediately felt like I'd figured out what was going on. This has not happened to me before on this level, but the information came through almost in a flash and I could hardly write it down fast enough. I'll share my impressions now and then I'll look at each card individually. From the 2 of Swords, I could see that Adrian was refusing to look at the facts about her boyfriends. From the 3 of Pentacles, I could see that Adrian viewed her dates as better than she was. From the 10 of Pentacles, I could see that Adrian was looking for a family. And from the 9 of Wands, I could see that Adrian had been hurt in the past. Now let's look at each card individually and see if my initial impressions were correct. Card number 1 is the 2 of Swords. In this card, we see Adrian as a blindfolded woman. The blindfold demonstrates that she needs to make a decision but can't see her options clearly. The question is, what is the decision that she needs to make? Adrian is seated on a gray stone bench that looks incredibly uncomfortable. Her feet are also on a gray surface. The gray represents neutrality and her lack of emotion. Swords represent thoughts, and Adrian is trying to make her decision logically. The blindfold is significant. Think about what happens when it is dark and you can't see. Your thoughts take over. I remember what it was like to go camping when I was a kid. My sister and I shared a 7 by 7 foot tent, and we weren't allowed to keep flashlights on because batteries were so expensive. When it's completely dark and there's only a nylon wall between you and the outside, your mind can take you to some pretty scary places. Even when you try to rationalize that the wolf howls you hear are actually across the lake and only sound like they're next to you, your thoughts, however logical, are not very believable. I think this is what's happening to Adrian. She can't see. She's being forced to turn inward, but her emotions are making it difficult for her to look at her thoughts rationally. Behind Adrian, we see choppy water with 2 large rocks. The water represents emotion and the rocks represent obstacles. We can see more rocks on the opposite shoreline, which signals even more obstacles. However, Adrian is facing forward. She is choosing to focus on her thoughts about her choice and not on her emotions or the obstacles facing her. Adrian is holding 2 swords. The swords are equal in size, so it shows that both choices have equal merit, and she can't figure out whether or not someone is mentally healthy. Most of the sword is a cold blue color that represents that it's about cold, unyielding facts. The swords must be very heavy and the position is very uncomfortable. To me, this represents that the decision is very difficult for her. She has her arms crossed over her heart. This can demonstrate that she is protecting herself from other people or that she is struggling to keep her emotions under control. So what is the decision that Adrian is trying to make? I believe that she's trying to figure out whether to trust her thoughts or her intuition, specifically as it relates to her dates. I think in the past that she's rationalized her dates' behaviors rather than trusting her gut. I'm going to use an out there example, but it's what came to mind. Let's say that Adrian's date is obsessed with serial killers. If it were me, that would be a major red flag. But Adrian ignores the pit in her stomach and tells herself that everybody has a hobby, that the subject is interesting on some level, and that true crime podcasts are a big deal these days, so he's not alone. Once you decide to override your gut, it is possible to rationalize anything. And that leads you to dating people who, if you were in touch with your intuition, you'd recognize were obviously mentally unhealthy. This card tells us that Adrian will continue to get clarity. The fact that she's asking the question about why she's attracted to mentally unhealthy people and asked for a tarot reading on the subject is a big step, and she will get answers. The dark blue sky represents Adrian's subconscious. The blindfold is over her third eye, which represents that she is drawing on her higher consciousness, intuition, and insight. Even though she's trying to focus on her thoughts, her intuition is still there, and she just needs to access it. The waxing moon is in its growth phase, which means that it will provide more illumination as it moves towards fullness, just as Adrian will continue to get clarity on why she has been attracted to unhealthy people. In summary, one of the reasons that Adrian is choosing unhealthy people is that she's focusing on her thoughts and ignoring her intuition and emotions. She needs to take off her blindfold, access her feelings, and trust her gut. Card number 2 is the Three of Pentacles. In a card with multiple people, the first thing we have to do is figure out which one represents Adrian. We can do this intuitively, and my belief is that it is the woman in polka dots. We can also use a pendulum, and you can see a picture of one on the screen. A pendulum is a weighted object to which you can ask yes/no questions. You can look at each person and ask, does this person represent Adrian? And you'll get one of 3 answers: yes, no, or I don't know. I have a whole video on how to use a pendulum, which I'll link to below. I did this exercise with my pendulum, and it confirmed that the woman in polka dots was Adrian. I wanted to make one more comment about using your intuition and pendulums. Your intuition is like a muscle. At one point, I was seeing a physical therapist and trying to strengthen a group of muscles in my leg called the quadriceps. These are 4 muscles that run from your hip, down the front of your thigh, and connect with your knee. In the beginning, these muscles were super weak, and I needed to have a physical therapist help me figure out how to contract the right muscle because 1, they were so weak that I found it hard to contract anything, and 2, because I didn't trust that I was contracting the right muscles. Eventually, I could isolate the right muscles, and they got stronger. It's the same with using your pendulum and your intuition. In the beginning, you will likely need the pendulum to help you figure out if you have the right person, and that's perfectly okay. Keep working at it, and at some point, you'll just be confirming your intuition and realize that your gut feeling about which person the tarot card represented will be correct. The 3 people in this card all have roles in designing the cathedral. The stonecutter is the craftsman or the talent. He's standing on a bench, which shows that he is more important than the other 2 people. Below the stonecutter is the monk in the middle. He is in charge of the cathedral and the person paying for the work. Adrian, wearing polka dots and holding the plans, is the designer. She's the person who came up with the plans and is making sure that the stonecutter does what he's supposed to. If you look at it this way, the stonecutter is merely a technician. Yet despite Adrian's important role and the fact she's dressed to be seen, she considers herself as less important than the stonecutter. I think that this speaks to Adrian having self-esteem issues. Monks were not allowed to marry, as a celibate life theoretically gave them more energy to focus on God. Adrian sees herself to be on the same level as the monk, but inferior to the stonecutter, who is the only potential love interest on the card. So I think that another reason that Adrian is attracted to unhealthy people has to do with their self-esteem. She doesn't see herself as being worthy of a healthy relationship. Card number 3 is the Ten of Pentacles. Initially, I thought this card meant that Adrian wanted a family, and I still believe this could be true. She may be getting to the point where her biological clock is ticking and she's anxious to find someone to settle down with. I think most people want some version of a happy family, and this one looks ideal. They live in what looks like a castle. There's a wealthy grandfather, a happy couple, a child, and a couple of dogs. It looks like a happy place to be. But as I thought about it further, I came to another conclusion, and that is that the reason Adrienne chooses mentally ill people has to do with how she was brought up. Once again, we have to decide which figure on the card represents Adrienne. My intuitive thought was that Adrienne is the little girl who's hiding behind her mother and looking away, and my pendulum confirmed this. I believe that something happened to Adrienne when she was a small child that messed her up and made her uncertain of what constitutes a healthy relationship. There could have been mental illness in her family, yet she was told that that behavior was normal, and she learned not to trust herself. Or she might be attracted to mental illness because it reminds her of her father or grandfather. For instance, I have a friend whose father had bipolar disorder. He was an incredibly talented artist when he was well enough to paint. It was normal for him to experience times when he was too depressed to get out of his dark room. And that period would end, and then he'd be painting almost 24/7 and barely sleeping. My friend adored her father, felt deeply bonded to him, and had no idea that this wasn't normal behavior. In this picture, we see this idyllic family, yet she is looking away and hiding from it. What happened to Adrienne could be abuse, addiction, or some other form of trauma. Whatever it is, Adrienne is choosing men who are unhealthy, even though they look like normal, upstanding citizens. Mentally unhealthy people are what Adrienne is familiar with because that's what she experienced in her home. You've made it this far in the video, and I wanted to stop and ask for a favor if you're not already a subscriber, and that is to please hit the subscribe button. It's free for you, and it will also help me to grow this channel. Plus, it means that you won't miss anything. Thanks so much, and if you're already a subscriber, I truly appreciate your ongoing support. Now let's get back to the video. The final card is the Nine of Wands. My initial impression was that Adrienne kept choosing unhealthy people because she had been hurt in the past, and I believe this is true. Here we have a young man standing on a stage who represents Adrienne. We see a person who is very fearful and looks exhausted. Because she is looking toward our left, which is the past, I think it is something that happened in her childhood. The scenery behind Adrienne looks beautiful, yet she is standing on a stage and the wands behind her form prison bars. In tarot, stages are places where you go to be separated from the people around you. It can also represent the fact that you are acting and hiding your true feelings. I feel like Adrienne has isolated herself from the rest of the world, and we can see the true self that she has been hiding, and she is a sad, battered soul. The bandage around her head indicates that she has been beaten up. The white indicates that she is feeling spiritually defeated or has some kind of a psychic wound. So I think that Adrienne has experienced a lot of trauma. Wands are about action and relate to the element of fire. The Eight of Wands behind Adrienne represents the actions that have hurt her, and they have taken their toll and essentially imprisoned her. I think that trying to figure out a plan to fix all of these issues is too much to bear. All Adrienne can manage at this point is one thing at a time, as shown by the single wand that she is holding, and she looks exhausted doing that. However, the card is not hopeless. In the background, we see green hills that represent health, vitality, and hope. The cloudless blue sky also shows clarity of thought. So I think that Adrienne is evaluating what has happened in her life, just like we saw in the Two of Swords. I think that the wand in her hand indicates that she will start to take action to dismantle all of the thoughts, beliefs, and habits that created her attraction to unhealthy people. I just think it will take a while. In summary, this reading answers Adrienne's question about why she keeps getting attracted to mentally unhealthy people. Card number 1 told us that Adrienne is trying to ignore her feelings and her emotions. Instead, she is rationalizing her thoughts that these mentally unhealthy men are actually fine. In card number 2, we determined that Adrian is attracted to mentally unhealthy people because she has low self-esteem. Although she is an accomplished woman, she doesn't see herself as being worthy of a healthy relationship. Card number 3 indicates that something happened in Adrian's childhood that made mentally unhealthy people a comfortable or familiar choice for her. Perhaps she experienced abuse, addiction, trauma, or someone in the household who suffered from mental illness. The final card indicates that Adrian has been hurt in the past and hasn't dealt with her physical or psychological pain. This card indicates that she does have hope. She needs to trust her emotions and dismantle all of the thoughts, beliefs, and habits that created her attraction to unhealthy people. I hope that this video gave you some ideas that you can apply to your tarot practice. Please leave a comment if you'd like to share what you learned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.